This is the MeatEater podcast coming at you shirtless, severely bug-bitten, and in my case, underwearless.
We hunt the MeatEater podcast.
You can't predict anything.
The MeatEater podcast is brought to you by First Light. Whether you're checking trail cams, hanging deer stands, or scouting for elk, First Light has performance apparel to support every hunter in every environment. Check it out at firstlight.com. FIRSTLITE.com. All right, we're joined today by some of the rootin'est, tootin'est, shootin'est fellas on the planet. Dan Horner and Patrick Hanley. I'm going to lay out some of these credentials.
All right.
Garrett, can you fill in with what it means?
Not as well as Daniel can.
Okay. So are you still in the military?
I'm finishing up my time in the National Guard. Yep.
So that means you got close to 20 years?
Almost, man.
That's a common move, right, in the service.
Yeah.
Finishing the National Guard.
Yeah. Try to. Yeah, I've got 2.5 years left. And I'll hit 20.
So you work at Sig.
Right.
And you're in the National Guard.
Yep.
And you enlisted at what age?
18. Yep. So 2006, joined, and then did 13 years at the Army Marksmanship Unit. And
how many years?
13. Yeah. 13 years. It was good. It was a good time.
Did you come in being a shooter? Being a marksman?
Yeah. So actually, I started competing when I was 12. I won a couple of national championships, and that got the AMU's attention, and they invited me down for a 1-week tryout. So they bring you down. You're still a civilian. You shoot with them, but it's not so much a test of your shooting ability. They want to see if they can stand you because you're on a little 6-man team, and they want to make sure that they actually want to be around you 24/7 and travel. So I know you guys know how that is. So you don't want to be attached. Like, you can be the best shooter hunter in the world. If I can't stand to be around you for a week, like, you got to go.
Yeah, it's like Janis.
So your dad must have been big time into it, or mom.
Yeah.
Someone got you into it.
It was crazy. My dad was a veterinarian, and one day a guy walked in and robbed him. Walked in and stuck a revolver in his face and went to rob the place, and he ended up. The guy put the gun down for just a second so he could try to get the cash box. And when he put the gun down, my dad dove across and took the gun from him and went to work on him. Put him in the hospital, and the dude did a ton of years. I think he's still in prison for trying to rob.
Oh, and your dad got the drop on him and got it and hit him?
Oh, yeah. Beat the brakes off the guy. So, then
but not shot him.
No, he didn't shoot. The craziest thing, the guy jumped on my dad's back. He turned around with a revolver, put it up under his chin, and pulled the trigger. And the guy got his pinky between the hammer and the firing pin.
What?
And it's the only thing that saved his life. Yeah. And, they subdued him. The cops took him to jail. And then my dad was like, well, he had a gun. He had a pistol in the drawer that he was standing in front of, but the guy just walked in with a revolver and cocked it.
Rob a veterinarian.
Yeah, not the tip of the spear of criminals. So,
because a lot of people go to the vet and be like, I'll be paying cash today.
on a Saturday. Yeah. Yep.
Like if when you paid up on Mingus, did you walk in there with $10,000 and just count them out in 20s to the vet?
No, yeah, exactly. So he wanted to carry a gun in his pocket, and he decided that if I'm going to carry a gun, I have the responsibility to be able to do it the correct way, right? And so we got involved with the local IDPA pistol shooting competitions, and I was a 12-year-old kid who was homeschooled, so I sat in the corner and taped targets and picked up brass, and then finally one of the old guys gave me a chance to shoot a stage, and I did it safely, obviously not well, but safely. And they continued to allow me to shoot, and so just went on from there. So I would get up early in the morning, I'd do my schoolwork, and then I would go to the range and I would cut grass, paint targets, load ammo, whatever, for a guy named D.R. Middlebrooks, who I worked for until I left for the Army, and he taught me how to shoot because he was a national champion, and just took off.
So did you was it that you were going to go in the Army and you were going to shoot in the Army?
Yeah, so
you kind of had some level of guarantee.
Well, yeah. Once I made it to the team, I had a slot, so I had to go into the basic training at Fort Benning, graduate infantry school there, and then was immediately assigned to the AMU. So I had a guaranteed path to that place. Now, you didn't have a guaranteed job, right? Like you still, just getting there was kind of the easy part. After that, you got to stay. But I was going to go to the Army no matter what. And, my parents had invested so much in me, I wanted to go give that a try. And then from there, I spent about half the time competing and about half the time teaching, deploying soldiers. So I would, there were many, many times I would teach for a week or two, go shoot a match on the weekend, and then immediately go back and continue training guys. So that was my life for 13 years.
My old man told a story 100 times, and the older I get, the less it makes sense. Well, just to give you an example, like we had this guy that we thought was our uncle, but he wasn't our uncle. And he had a stuffed monkey. And he always told us, and he was missing some of his fingers.
The monkey or the uncle?
No, my uncle, Gunner, was missing fingers and had a stuffed monkey. And he told us that monkey bit my fingers and the zoo killed it and stuffed it and gave it to me. So as an adult, I called my mom and he said, you know that monkey that bit Uncle Gunner? She's like, a monkey that bit Uncle Gunner? She said, Uncle Gunner cut his fingers off on a lawnmower. I don't know where he She's like, I don't know where he got that monkey. He just had that monkey hanging in his house.
That's awesome.
My old man tells me this story all the time where he's like, growing up in Chicago, he said there's a butcher down the road from him, okay? And he said that a burglar comes in and for whatever reason lays the pistol to rob the butcher, somehow rests his hand on the butcher block. And this not quick-witted, that means you're funny. This quick-thinking butcher severs the man's hand with a cleaver. And I'd share that story. And then later on, like, I just can't picture robbing someone and going like, that you rest your pistol on the cutting board.
There you go.
Lazy.
There's a scenario in which it happens.
Yeah, you told me that story 100 times. Stick them up. I just don't know. Do you do that?
I don't have a lot of experience robbing people with a revolver. So.
Well, if you ever do, let me know if you find it necessary to rest your hand on the cutting board.
He was just like a lazy robber, like you're just leaning up against the.
He needed a stable rest. He wanted to make a good first shot. You got to make the first shot count.
Yeah. So, how did you guys meet, Patrick and Dan? You met through Sig?
Yeah. So when I came to Sig, I was a rifle product manager, and I was like at a point where I was like, we had pistol shooters, and I'm like, I want a rifle shooter. I want like somebody who can go compete for us on the rifle side. And I started digging in, and I found a bunch of Daniel's videos, and I was like, I went to our head of marketing. I'm like, this is the guy I want. And they're like, well, we got this guy and this guy. And I'm like, no, this is the guy. Like, this has to be the only guy. Come to find out, the two guys that kind of got him up and going worked with us, and they were like, yeah, Daniel's the guy.
Oh, that's cool.
And so he came on right about the time that we started working on the Cross. So Daniel was like part of that first venture with me on that. And we did a bunch of hunts together when we first started the Cross. So we kind of earned our friendship on the mountain together doing stuff. And like we learned we have the same type of like creative, we're the idea guys. So like we go out and we're like, why can't you do it like this? And then we have the really good people that actually make things, that make stuff happen that we have at the shop. Yeah.
Oh, I never got around to the credentials. 13-time USPSA, what's that stand for?
United States Practical Shooting Association.
13-time USPSA multi-gun champ. 4-time 3-gun national champ. 3-gun meaning pistol, shotgun, rifle.
Yep, pistol, rifle, carbine.
8-time sniper champ. 2-time IDPA.
Yeah, that's what allowed me to get a chance to go to the AMU and try out.
What's the IDPA stand
International Defensive Pistol Association.
National champ.
Yep.
And then former Army Marksman Unit member. You and I took to liking you. I'll tell you what happened when I met you. Can we talk about that trick?
Yeah.
It wasn't that unsafe. It wasn't unsafe at all.
No, nobody got hurt.
We were talking about people should listen. People should listen.
It wasn't a trick. It was
a demonstration.
Yeah.
Not a trick. It wasn't like a shoot trick. We were talking about form and shooting guns, shooting rifles and different mistakes people make. And I don't know what we got on. Oh, you know what we were talking about is a suppressor.
Oh, okay.
We got on the subject of a suppressor changes your zero, but we were also talking about posture and shooting form. And when you rest if you were to rest your rifle on a rock or over a tree limb,
Big difference.
And lay the barrel on something. Anyways, we got to talk about this.
I think it came into the conversation where we were talking about how a lot of people, when they get that rest, they like to put their hand on top of the barrel.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, I thought we were talking about what your suppressor does, why your suppressor changes your zero so much. Anyways.
Yeah.
Dan had me line up on a target that was maybe 100 yards away.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm shooting a bolt rifle, and we line up with a bipod on a target that's 100 yards away, and he presses my shoulder or arm to say, I'm going to put this much downward pressure.
Not much.
No.
Yeah.
Like the weight of a beer can.
Yeah. Yeah. What most people would think would be insignificant.
Well, yeah, the weight of a beer, like
a pound.
Insignificant press.
Mm-hmm.
And I puts his finger, not his hand, a finger on the end of that barrel.
Not the very end of the
Yeah,
right. He kind of
not the part with the hole in it.
He kind of corked the hole with his finger. Toward the end, not the muzzle. Toward the end, downward pressure with one finger, and I think that thing dropped 9 inches or something like that.
It's insane. It's predictable, but it's way more than people give it credit for.
Yeah. Point being, when you're shooting and you're like, oh, I'm going to rest on this into some goofy position and my barrel's on a rock or something.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Holy cows, that have a big difference.
You'll go 4 foot over the back.
So you guys are going to shoot with Yanni this week?
Yep, we're doing our elite training our elite training guide thing that we do every year. So he's coming out to shoot that. He's in the advanced class this year. He did it last year.
I graduated.
Hold on, so Yanni, you graduated to advanced.
He graduated
shooter?
to advanced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What did you have to do to pull that off?
We did that same trick where you press down the barrel, and I had to make my bullet kind of shoot in a spiral like that downrange.
You're gonna have to start doing his credentials for shooting when he comes on every time now.
Yeah, lay it on me.
I just went through the course that they set up last year, which was, we practiced a bunch of different positions, shot off some tripods. The pistol shooting was the most fun for me. I'd never really had, I'd say, professional pistol instruction, and so I did that, just the instruction, and then they had a course set up where we kind of walked, and you didn't know when or where the next target was going to be. You would just walk, and then someone would say, I forget, I didn't do it with you. I think
shooting rifles or pistols?
Pistols now, and all of a sudden they'd be like, all right, right side, right next to the cedar, and you'd look over there, and there'd be one, and you'd shoot it, and then keep walking, and it was fun.
And you'd graduated.
Yep. I guess so. They invited me for round 2.
But it's mostly guides and outfitters.
Yeah, and a lot of the reason we do that, we do it with both kind of walks of life, but what we do a lot with the guides and outfitters that they don't get taught is, like, first of all, like, a lot of the guys that come there that are guides and outfitters, they're not always great shooters. They're great hunters. Like, they know how to find stuff. But when we send them product and we know they're going to be able to use the glass well, what we do with this is we're teaching them how to help other people. So you get a guy that comes up on a sheep hunt and he shoots twice a year, which a lot of these guys get, and he's got the mental wherewithal to teach somebody a positioning, not to put your finger on the barrel, not to lean it on a bad spot. Like, those are things that we teach these guys so that when they bring a client in, it's like, how do you give a client a better experience with our product or with whatever they're shooting by teaching them how to position right before they make a shot? Because a lot of it is like up to the moment is what the outfitter's there for. Like, they're bringing you to the spot, but what do you want to tout as an outfitter? Like 99% success rate, not like, hey, you always get a shot. You want the success. So it's better for them, and the guys learn a lot at it to learn how to teach people how to shoot as well. That's why we pair everybody up so that they work with the other person to kind of get them positioned, learn how to shoot off tripods, off backpacks, off all different scenarios. So you're kind of getting used to it, and using rangefinders, dialing MOA versus MRAD, stuff like that.
Yep. Garrett, you been winning any tournaments lately?
Man, it's been like some high highs and low lows, man. I got 3rd down in San Diego in open light. Probably like the worst conditions match I've ever shot in. It was like 30-mile-an-hour crosswinds. When I signed up for San Diego, I thought like palm trees and stuff like that, and it was actually high desert and sand. And miserable weather, like 43 degrees, raining and wind. And came back from that. Did a locals match and got steamrolled, like bad. Didn't do good at all. Went to another match, it was a smaller match, but cleaned the match. I didn't miss a target during that match. and was like thinking maybe I should quit my day job and just be a professional shooter.
Did you win any money?
No, you don't win money. There's no money in the sport. You know? And then
So you've never gone to one of these and came home with a bunch of money? It's not like rodeo.
Product.
It's not like rodeo.
No, it's not like rodeo. Like in like the 3-gun world and stuff like that Daniel does, there's some money stuff in there. Mostly in NRL Hunter and all that, and even in PRS, a lot of times it's primarily product. Like, so you could win a gun that might be worth $5,000.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that's like you see a lot of these guys eBay's accounts are just on fire. Right.
Because they're
Like,
just selling junk they won.
they'll pick up a new scope, throw it on on eBay. Yeah.
We got some dumb golfer down here, Brian Harmon. He's winning money by the millions.
Yeah, it's not quite like golfing yet.
Not golf.
I would advocate for that. I did compete the way I met Daniel. I competed against Daniel 4 years ago. Was
you did?
The Burris Extreme that we had down?
Who did better?
What?
Oh, the Comp Expo, you guys.
The Comp
Comp
Expo.
Expo,
So
that's right.
Here's the deal.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get from my perspective. It was.
You're going to give who did better from your perspective.
No, I'm going to give you like
It's not
the
just a, it's not just like a
basic summary of the match.
just like a score thing.
All right.
No. Don't bore me with the details. Give me your perspective.
Yeah. Well, that might bore you with the details. But so this was like an invite only. Why I got invited doesn't matter. I shouldn't have been. An invite only match for 10 dudes, right? That they kind of hand selected in the industry to shoot an NRL Hunter match, a 3-gun match, an archery match.
NRL means
National Rifle League.
Okay.
Right. So long distance shooting.
Yep.
Archery and trap. So they took 4 different types of shooting and combined it into one.
And everybody had to do all of them?
The 10 guys had to do all of them, right? So I got invited, and again, probably shouldn't have been, because I showed up and I was like, wearing my MeatEater shirt. Everyone else is like Daniel, where they're like just stuck with logos everywhere because they do this for a living. And
they look like NASCAR drivers.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. And I had like the shirt that says like your logo here kind of a thing. Right? Like, I'm still looking.
How many matches had you shot up to that point?
I had done a couple NRLs, never done 3-gun.
Yeah, and this is the finals of the NRL, like the hardest NRL match of the year. It's a world championship 3-gun match, and it's a sporting clays course that was put together by some like Olympic level sporting clay. Like no joke.
Yeah, it was, and it was miserable, man. Like I have never felt so beat down in my life because we had to do an entire NRL match in a day, which usually they're 2-day matches.
20 stages.
Yeah, 20 stages.
What kind of distances for shooting?
So we were shooting, anywhere between like 4 and 1100.
Okay.
Right. And it was just like high wind, miserable heat. Like it wasn't like fun conditions. The 3-gun stuff, I ran in there with primarily borrowed gear. The only thing that wasn't borrowed was my P320. And like I was using some like bullpup carbine too that it was a mess, right?
Yeah, break open side by side.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just started picking up rocks and throwing at targets.
The sporting clays was 150 rounds of sporting clay. It was like it never ended.
Which broke open my cheek. So that was before NRL. I didn't have my shotgun fitted to me real well. I was using my 3-gun shotgun for clays. And I had to, with that shotgun particularly, I had to like put my cheek right on the rise of the shotgun. And so it just welted me open. So then I went through the NRL match with this, like, I looked like I had gotten in a fight, right? Like I had this big welt on my face. The NRL thing I did okay at. I'll point out, I might have actually edged out Daniel.
I think you
NRL.
did. Yeah, he got me.
But then like everything else got destroyed. So I got 9th out of 10 people. And then Daniel actually did it in less time than anybody else because he had to go on a sheep hunt and then still won it by like a long shot. It wasn't actually.
So you got number 1. You got number 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
And then we got a sheep. So
that was good. It was so funny because we did that and we flew out. We finished that match Friday night and flew out on a 6 o'clock flight Saturday morning to go to Alaska, and got in. We let you know how it's just plane after plane to finally get in there, and we finally got into the backcountry, grabbed our packs, and we were 7 miles in, and we sat down, and Patrick gets an inReach message, and he looks over at me. We're like sitting about this far apart, and he's like, dude, you won. And I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That was the celebration.
We were destroyed, man.
Yeah.
But there's a bow shooting component to it.
Yeah, it was a...
That one Tack put on. Tack actually
yeah.
did that.
So you shot a bow in it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he beat me at that too.
He learned. He was telling me how he learned to shoot a bow like 2 weeks before that, and I shot that with him, and it just made me feel disgusting as a bow hunter that he got that bow 2 weeks before and shot that well.
I went down to my buddy down in Fort Benning, who's like a national champion archer, and I was shooting this hunting bow. And what made me go down to him was I was shooting it at like 50 yards, and I'd shoot a good group and have one that was like off call. And so I went down to him, and I'm like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, fix me, right? It's definitely me. And he's like, man, you just got the wrong equipment, right? Like you're trying to ask an F-150 do what a Ferrari's supposed to do. And I'm like, he's like, I run a bow shop, so I don't want to be that guy that's like selling you a bow, but just try this. And he gave me that bow, and it like the thing just wanted to shoot in the middle, like every single shot. Yeah, it was great.
I haven't found that bow yet.
Does the Army own any bows? Because you
Not
know
that I'm aware of.
Rambo,
Just crossbows.
Rambo took on
yeah.
the Rambo took on what was left of the Army in Vietnam.
He was ahead of his time, though. He was a little out of the box.
So they don't do
thinking.
any. This is not a bow thing there.
I don't think they advertised that part.
No.
There's a back room of flaming arrows that nobody goes into anymore.
Hey, so I want to talk a little bit about. Yanni was just saying we should do a whole podcast about caliber battles. Garrett was saying how. Let me set this up first because lately I even recommended this to Corinne, but my kids shoot the Sig Cross in 6.5. They like I proselytize that gun. I've had tremendous luck teaching my kids how to shoot it.
Yep.
Because with kids, Yanni can back me up on this. How old? You guys got kids? How old?
2 and 4.
I'm 5 and 10.
18-year-old.
You're what age?
5 and 10.
Okay. They get all worked up about kick.
Yep.
All they talk about. I was just talking to my nephew's boy. What's that make him?
Nothing.
Like I could marry that kid.
Relation.
Something removed? No, I don't know.
Talking to my nephew's boy, and that's the whole primary thing he wants to talk about is the kick. What's the kick? What's the kick?
That's what my son asks me every time.
They get all worked up and they conflate noise.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's the noise, there's the kick. It gets turned into the same thing in their head, right? And they can't tell the one from the other. And I've done things with them like in preparing to turkey hunt. I'll have them shoot target loads, right? I'll put earplugs in them. I'll put foam earplugs in them. Then I'll put ear muffs on them and have them shoot target loads, and then never even tell them that I'm loading in a turkey load. And then they get a shot at a turkey, and they never ever talk about this horrendous kick that's supposed to be so horrible. So in teaching the kids to shoot, it was a lot of stuff about kick and everything. But I started them shooting a Sig Cross with a suppressor and a bipod, like, you know, like a nice heavy bipod, and they shoot and they giggle when they shoot, and they shoot. Awesome. They can shoot good, man. Like they shoot better than they shoot better than I could shoot in my 20s.
Yep.
They like to shoot steel plates. They have a good time shooting the guns. They're just super shootable. So I'm always telling people about them. And then Garrett, I didn't even really I see this, but I didn't understand it. That you said like people love to hate the 6.5. Creedmoor.
The Creedmoor. Yeah.
But I feel like that's like arguing about
it's a stigma, man. Like the amount of memes out there
yeah,
about
what is
a 6, because it was trendy, but it's also like a light caliber for hunting, right? So it's kind of like, well, if you can't handle a man's gun, you get a 6.5.
It's referred to as the man bun caliber.
Right.
Exactly. They call it the man bun.
Yeah. And
there you go. That's why people
that's the
love to
memes.
hate
That's
it.
what most of the memes are.
There's a lot of man bun references. And
so it's that it doesn't kick enough.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right? Or it's not edgy enough, like, because it got a whole lot of marketing hype when it came out the gate. So, like, you know, Daniel and I were talking, if you go to a match and most people are shooting 6.5 Creedmoors, right? If somebody is shooting that gun and you ask them, what are you shooting? Most of the time, they'll, like, look kind of down at the ground and be like, oh, 6.5 Creedmoor, right? they might be shooting like a less kicking gun, like someone else might be shooting a less kicking gun, like a 6 Dasher or something like that. And I'm like, oh, I'm shooting like a 6 BR, right? And they're proud about it. But even the guys that are shooting 6.5 Creedmoors are a little bit like, well, shoot. It's just a thing. Yeah, there's a stigma to it.
So when you guys built when you built it, how did you were you worried about it?
No, I mean that we were good. We were ready for the man bun. When you look at the market for hunting rifles, 6.5 and 308 just dominate. Like there's definitely like the West has changed a lot of that with bigger calibers and stuff. But
when you say 308, you mean like a 308?
A 308.
Okay,
yeah.
not things in the 308 category.
No, just those two calibers make up like 60% of the hunting rifles that sell. It's insane. And
still today?
Yeah, and
now that people are just like making up calibers every other morning.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like calibers don't catch easy. Like the 308 was military, and the fact that it caught on was kind of strange, but it was just available ammunition in its time, and so everybody like took to it, and it became a popular cartridge. 6.5 kind of came along. I was working at my prior company when Hornady brought it to us, and we ended up doing a caliber called the 30TC, which was the 30 cal version of that 6.5 Creedmoor at the time, and that kind of like went up and died. But 6.5 was not popular for like 5 years. It was like slowly getting there, but calibers don't just take off.
Hold on a minute. 60% of the hunting rifles sold, however you categorize that, are in 6.5 Creedmoor and 308.
Yep. It's insane. Like I looked at it, I was surprised when I looked at it. When you look at all the other calibers, they're all like even 300 Win Mag is the biggest in like the Magnum category, but even it's not that big that you would think it is. It's like it's crazy how many people buy those, but they're accessible cartridges to get. They're fairly cheap, and if you're a whitetail hunter, I mean, they work in most areas of the country. So,
do you know what the 308 6.5 breakdown is between those two?
We were talking about this the other day. It basically like out to like 300 yards. There's not a lot of change. I mean, if you're shooting,
are you talking like percentage of sales?
Oh,
yes,
percentage.
Exactly.
6.5 is like an edge higher.
Oh, really?
What?
Yeah. And this is like
I got a handful. I need to grow out me a little man. I need to grow me out a little man bun, man. I'm gonna cut some of my daughter's hair off and make me a little man bun that goes on the back.
That'll be the day.
I just had some question about all that.
But we were saying this earlier. Calibers it's a super interesting thing to me because we were saying this. It's regional too. Like
I know what I was going to ask you now. When you were a kid, so you grew up hunting.
Yeah.
What everybody shoot when you were a kid?
30-30.
Oh, totally.
It was
if you were badass.
Yep.
If you were badass, you had a 30-06.
Yeah, and I was New England, so it was the Benoits, it was the 35 Whelen, and it was a 7600 pump, or like you had either a Henry or a Marlin, or you had nothing, like lever guns and pump guns. That was it. You never used a semi.
What state?
New Hampshire.
Okay.
New Hampshire and Maine.
Because the 7600 pump was in Pennsylvania was known as the Amish machine gun.
It was too. Yeah, like it was the same way up in Maine. Like they just emptied it every time, whether they needed to or not.
So when I was a kid, I was born right at the 30-30 to like in our area in the upper Midwest, in Michigan. It was like I was brought up in the transition of the 30-30 to the 30-06.
Mm-hmm.
You'd say that, wouldn't you, Yanni? With the hunting guns?
Where I grew up, we couldn't use rifles.
Well, you guys were in the shotgun zone.
Yeah, we were in the shotgun zone. So
got it.
I killed my first deer all with 12 gauge.
Yeah. So what's up with putting making Sig Crosses in a 300? That's all I ever shoot. I don't shoot anything but. I mean, me personally, that's what I like to shoot.
Yeah, I think because of the volume of the market, we did the short action first and the Magnum gun second, but we did that with the premise knowing that if we made a Magnum action, if we designed it so that it could hold pretty much anything that was available, that we start in 300 Win Mag, and then the world is our oyster for making other calibers now. Like we have 300 PRC we're doing a 7 PRC. Once you have that length of the action, you're pretty much able to do whatever you want. So we did that out to 300 PRC knowing we could do a bunch of other cartridges too.
What percent of guns in America are left-handed?
Whew. It's an interesting thing because when you look at it, it's like 10%, but having worked in a lot of, like, I used to travel around and visit with dealers a lot, and I think most people change to shooting right-handed because they can never find the left-handed gun
Yeah.
they want, and the dealers don't want to carry them because it's like, sure, I'll get 10 guns and these cartridges and this bolt gun, and then I got to go do the same thing for left hand. So they're like, just give me a 308 in left hand. So if the guy doesn't want that cartridge or whatever it is, like they don't have it. So I think it's a little bit weighted where I think more people would do it because like left-handed shotguns seem like they're a lot more popular. Like people are pretty like if somebody's left-handed, they shoot a left-handed shotgun. But a lot of the people,
Yeah, but I mean, a left-handed shotgun mostly was just that
the ejection.
You remember, you remember that? Well, like I'm a lefty.
Mm-hmm.
You just learn to live with the ejection. But you know the Browning BPS?
Yep.
How it had that little thumb?
Oh yeah.
They
On
had
the wrong
the
side.
tang. What do you call it? Like a I think it's a tang safety.
Yep. Tank safety. Yep.
That just made it ambidextrous.
Yep.
The fact that the shells are spitting off across your face is just like you're never going to solve that problem.
Yep.
But that would be like a lefty. But I was just say I grew up like Hendrix. Like Hendrix was left-handed but played a right-handed guitar.
Yep.
So for me, like shooting all those shotguns that had a safety on the trigger mechanism, when I grab a gun, if I'm holding a shotgun, I'm still wrapping my hand around. Like that's just my hand. I can't explain it. I guess I walk around with my left middle finger reaching under the trigger guard, and that rests on the safety. If you're like trying to jump a bird, and still haven't undone that. I still catch myself because you just don't have them.
Yeah.
Like if you're like, you just shoot hand-me-downs, like for most people. But these dudes did this thing where they were looking at Clovis, you know what a Clovis point is?
Mm-hmm.
I tried to re-find this, but I looked at it a long time ago and actually quoted it in something. These guys are trying to figure out the prevalence of left-handedness among Ice Age Clovis hunters. And they were looking at resharpening flakes on Clovis points. So after you made the point and hafted it, and you can tell when they re-flaked it. And they're like, they were going by the fact that, I can't remember, I think they were going by the fact that if you were a lefty, you would have held the foreshaft in your left hand.
So that's how they were able to tell.
Meaning you're holding it and you're pressure flaking and then flipping to pressure flake. And these dudes had determined, I can't remember what it was, 17% of Clovis hunters were left-handed. It seems like some total
Wild.
BS, dude, but yeah.
Makes sense.
So they had left-handed stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just on a self-validating mission there is all that was.
Yeah. But I haven't been able to refine that, but I ran into it one time and just surprised me because the sporting goods world is mean to left-handed
Yeah,
people.
they are. And that's why I said I think most people just, like most of the people that work at SIG, when we came out with that bolt gun, they were like, oh, I've been shooting righties my whole life. Like they're used to not doing it, so they teach themselves the other way.
Mm-hmm. I think that in the future, being able to fold your stock.
Yep.
Because I've had a handful of folding stocks. When it comes to putting your stuff on your backpack, man, God, it just changes the whole game, dude. People make all kinds of crazy ways to carry guns on a backpack.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with those little kangaroo pouches and all that. Once you fold the stock, it just click, click. There's no... Because it gives you like something to grab onto.
Yeah.
I never owned anything but a traditional gun and like traditional style rifle growing up. And even when I got the SIG, and a lot of that started, like I took one of our better, longer suppressors on a hunt on a traditional style rifle before we made the cross. And me and my boss went out and we ended up shooting an elk, and we were walking out and I got hung up on so much deadfall, and I think I turned that rifle like 10 waves from Sunday to try to reposition it on the pack.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm already tired. We're walking out with meat on our backs, and I remember sitting there with him, and I'm like, why do we do this? Like, I'm thinking of all the guns we make at work, and I'm like, why doesn't like more rifles fold? And he's like, well, hunters, they like traditional style stuff, and it's hard to get into that world. I'm like, I think it's because they don't know. I feel like they just need to know there's
they
a
have
better
no other
answer.
options.
Yeah. I think it's not known.
It's such a difference. And same thing with short barrels. Like part of that is some of the New England in us, because I never saw a long barrel rifle growing up. But if you look at rifle barrel sales, it's 24 inch, like big time. Like that's a lot of what sells in most calibers. But when you look at most calibers, if you did it properly, every caliber would have a different length barrel. like it would be 23.2 or 19.6.
Like its own sweet spot.
Yeah, where the point of diminishing returns hits. Like you don't, once you stop burning powder and you're getting minimal gains, how much longer do you want to carry with you? And that was how Daniel, he worked with me on developing the first cross barrel lengths. Was he literally bought rifles and took a hacksaw and went 1 inch at a time and recorded data, and we went through it, and we're like, because we wanted to have suppressor length barrels that you put a suppressor on and it's not some crazy length now.
Yeah, we were on a conference call and everybody was like, well, what barrel length should we go with? And everybody was throwing out ideas, and I was like, well, do we know? And me and Patrick started really like pressing guys on like, why do you feel this way? You know, what's making you say that? And nobody really had any justification. So yeah, we just went out and bought 2 guns and bought the 4 most popular hunting ammunitions and went down to the range, and I started at 24 inches, shot 5 rounds over the chrono, cut an inch off, all the way down to 16 and a half inches.
Talk about what happened on what happened with this. How does that work? Like, what are you looking for?
So to see when you see that massive step off in velocity. So when you cut off an inch from 24 to 23, you might lose 40 feet per second or 30 feet per second. But when you step from 17 and a half inches to 16 and a half inches, you might lose 130 feet per second. So there's somewhere where it's like, you know, we're still making efficient powder burn, and we don't want to cut into that portion of the barrel. We want to. So what we found with the 6.5 Creedmoors, we lost a lot of velocity between 18 and 16 inches. So that's why the short cross has an 18-inch 6.5 Creedmoor barrel, but a 16-inch 308 barrel. And yeah, and to get into the nerd side of it.
So how long is what's the sweet spot for or not the sweet spot? What's the diminishing return on a 300?
20, like 22.
Oh, so they need to be long.
Well, you got to get that powder burn.
Yeah. So if you think it's relative to the volume of the barrel, if you really want to go down like the nerd route. So if you think about how much volume is in a 6.5 barrel versus a 308 barrel.
I mean, if you poured a liquid in there and then measured it out. Yeah, how much is in there?
I mean, we could do the math on it, but it's significantly more if you think of the area of the circle of.
Is it in tablespoons?
I mean, it'd be in whatever we put it in. We could use.
No, but I never thought about that. Yeah, how much volume is in there?
Yeah, it's actually significantly and
like a couple like a shot.
This is really interesting to me. Like you're transferring that chemical energy into the bullet, right? So like that's what you're trying to do is and the face of that bullet is where it's absorbing all that energy from the powder burning. So the larger the face of that bullet has to absorb the energy of the powder, the more energy will be transferred into that projectile. So if you think about a small bullet, like it can't be accelerated over the same distance as quickly because it's not exposed to as much pressure as in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you can get these shorter barrels on fatter bullets to go equally fast as the lighter bullets of the smaller caliber.
Yeah, well, that doesn't jive with what you're just saying. That 22 inches for like that's a bigger bullet.
But it's relative. So it's where you see the giant velocity drop, right? So in a 308, I've got 40 grains of powder. In a 300 Win Mag, I got 78 grains of powder.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to burn 30. I've got 30 some more grains of powder burning, and also I've got, if I light off all that powder at the exact same time, my pressure is way higher on a 300 Win Mag. It's higher anyway, but if you use the same speed powder, it would be a bomb, right? So you got to use a slower powder that kind of pushes that bullet. So I raise up to 65,000 psi, and I stay there as long as I can while that bullet's in the barrel, and then it drops off. And so that's where these guys try to play the powder game to get a slow pushing powder for your big bullets because that bullet's in that barrel longer. Whereas if you're in a 308, I've got less powder, and I also know that the bullet's not going to be in the barrel as long, so I can use a little bit quicker burn rate powder. But you're starting at, if I got a 24-inch 308, I might go from 2750 on a 24-inch barrel to 2550 in a 16-inch barrel. On a 300 Win Mag, I might go from 3,100 feet a second in a 24-inch barrel to 2,500 feet a second in a 16-inch barrel.
Got it.
Right.
Got it, yep.
So it's like I go from 3,150 at 24 to 2,950 at 20. No one really cares. But if I go from 3,000 feet a second to 2,500 feet a second, like why not just shoot a 308? I got less recoil, right?
Yep, I'm with you.
Yeah.
You know what I asked you about before, but I can't remember what you told me. speaking like the speed of powder burns, what is the main thing that's going wrong when you get your rifle too hot at the range? Because I'd heard like so many different things. Like some people say you chamber the round and it heats the powder up, and the powder burns at a different because it's hot now.
Yeah, and it's true.
That is true?
It is true, but you got to be really running on the ragged edge. Like nothing that you're going to go get from the store is going to do that.
So what is the main, when your gun gets too hot and it starts shooting wild, what is the main thing going wrong?
There's a little bit of black magic to long range rifle shooting, and I believe it's the expansion of the metals. So you have that long, think about that barrel, right? And it's long and skinny, and there's a hole roughly in the middle, right? But we all know if you look down a bunch of barrels, that hole's not in the specific middle every single time. So
really?
Yeah, 100%. Like it's a big long hole to drill perfectly straight. So or hammer for however that your particular barrel gets made. So if you have any portion of that barrel expanding at a different rate than the other portion of the barrel, it's literally bending,
I got
right?
you.
Yeah. But then the biggest thing is, and people talk about like barrel burn and ammo, and like that is true to a degree, but it's a lot of that heat cycling, right? So it's like if I get the throat of that barrel super, super hot and then continue to put 65,000 PSI on it, you're just hitting it with a little plasma cutter every time that thing goes off, you're going to eat up the erosion, or you're going to erode the throat of that thing, and then you're going to start marring and scarring bullets, and the gun's going to stop shooting well. And it is a function of volume of bullets, I would say, but it's more likely that it's a function of the heat cycles you put that barrel through before you start seeing bad accuracy due to barrel wear. On like high volume stuff.
I don't mean accuracy due to the barrel wear, but just the fact that it goes to shit when it gets hot. That's still what you're saying. Same thing you're talking about.
Yeah, thin barrel. I mean, me and Patrick shot guns that you can't get more than 3 bullets through because the barrel's so daggone skinny that when it heats up, the thing's warping.
I've owned some of those.
Yeah, yeah, and they're great for carrying. But you just got to know, like, I better get it done in 3 shots, or this thing's going to go haywire.
Yeah, that's why when you're shooting them and you get zeroed, and then you go and shoot from a cold bore later, and it's like not even anywhere,
not even close.
Yeah, you realize because it's like you're zeroed on. There's just no consistency.
And then if you really want to go down it, it's like you start heating these things up on a fatter barrel, right? Like a competition rifle. You've got a steel barrel going into aluminum receiver, into titanium rings, into aluminum scope, into glass, and all that stuff's heating up at different rates and expanding at different rates. And so that's why we all chase a 1/10 or 2/10 of a mil, quarter, half inch, zero all of the time.
Did you shoot MOA or mil in the military?
Mil. Yeah, mil, everything. But it's like kilometers and miles per hour, right? It doesn't change the velocity of the car. It just tells me how fast I'm going with different numbers.
But you learn to think in mil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's easier to shoot comps in mills, particularly with wind holds, but it's easier to hunt when I'm talking somebody through like where they need to hold for wind in MOA for me, right? Not having spent as much time in mills, because like if, when you and I are shooting together, right, and I see you hit 9 inches left on a 900-yard target, I'm just immediately going to tell you, oh, you're a minute off.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to do something for people that are at home. Not correct me, but I'm trying to picture you're at home there and you're sitting at a table and the table never ends. It's a table that goes for an eternity away from you. Now, like you can imagine your head when we say a 45-degree angle. So imagine from your table you shoot a 45-degree angle, and that angle also goes forever, right? Picture that you're measuring the distance between the table and where it hits that 45-degree angle at an eternity, right? The measurement grows at a predictable amount. But now imagine that you shoot an angle that's not 45 degrees, but you shoot an angle that is a 1-degree angle at an eternity. No, but it's actually a 60th.
Yeah.
Okay. Now imagine, so there's your 1-degree angle, and picture what that's going to look like. Now imagine that you shot an angle that's 1/60th of 1 degree. Is that what it is? 1/60?
Yep,
Okay,
yep,
you shot
you're
an
on it.
angle that's off that table that's 1/60th of 1 degree. Well, at 100 yards, that line sits 1 inch above that table.
Yep.
And
Yeah, it's not much.
that's what makes MOA like nice in my head.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you click 9 out of 10 scopes, maybe 10 out of 10 scopes, 9 out of 10 scopes, when you click it, when you go click, when you're adjusting it, it has now moved it a quarter of a 60th.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's moved it a quarter of a 60th of a degree, meaning it moved at, if you go down that table 100 yards, it's moved that line down, that 1 inch line, one click has moved it to a 3/4 inch. It'll measure 3/4 inches off the table.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
click.
1 click would be a 1/4 inch off the table. Yeah.
Okay, do that for me with mills.
0.3 of a
No,
mil.
but give me where it all comes from.
So a mill,
Because it's not
a mill's
based
actually,
off of degrees.
Yeah, so there, it's, and there's some nerds out there that'll probably correct me, but it's like 3,700 and some mills in a circle,
Oh, so it is.
and then
okay.
they tone it down.
Says
the
who?
army.
The British?
So here's the interesting thing: a mill, to my understanding, it's not an angular measurement. It's a unit. It's a weird unit. A mill is if you go 1,000 units away from the point of origin, and then you go up 1 unit, that's a mill. So if I go 1,000 yard or 1,000 meters away, and then I go up 1 meter, that angular measurement is a mill.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's not an angular measurement in the way that we think of a degree.
Got it.
Yeah. And so like,
See, I found a lot of comfort in the MOA is even like it even stems to the same concept as navigation.
yeah. Well, yeah. But here's the crazy thing. The Army just came up and said that there's 3,600 mills in a circle.
Because they had to make some.
Yeah. Because you can't divide by 3,700 or whatever it really is equally. And so they use it for like artillery corrections and stuff. And so they needed something that fit. But it's like 17.7 mils in a degree, where there's 60 minutes in a degree.
My dad called artillery in World War II, and he would talk about. I feel like they would
Mills.
talk. That was mills back then.
That was mils. I mean,
But he would talk about calling it a click or something like that.
so a lot of times they'll say like kilometer is a click.
Oh,
So 1,000 meters. Yeah.
I just remember. I can't. Maybe I'm messing up how he would describe how they would do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's what everything nowadays that I'm aware of is all the call for fire is all adjusted in mils. So like that's why all these binos have like gross 5, 10, 15, 20 mil adjustments so they can see it and then correct from their location. But
Mills is also more trackable. If you explain like a 7, like if someone says they have a 7 mile an hour gun, right?
Yeah.
Mills is really handy. Can you explain
A
that?
7 mile an hour gun.
So it's a wind formula. So if you have so let's say we're shooting 500 meters, okay? And just bear with me and I'll explain it. But so we're shooting at 500 meters. If your gun is a 3 mile an hour gun, you're going to hold 0.5 mils, whichever direction. We're going to say left, 0.5 mils left, and that is going to account for that 3 mile an hour of drift. If you shoot a 6 mile an hour gun, you're still going to hold left 0.5, and it's going to account for a 6 mile an hour drift. The reason that it would change is the ballistic coefficient of the projectile. And so you can look at the ballistic coefficient of your projectile and say, okay, my gun is a 3 mile an hour gun, 4 mile an hour gun.
I can't sit here and act like I understand.
Yeah, well, so I'll bring it back, I hope. And so the what it essentially equates to is when you're trying to shoot rapidly at distance, the 100 meter range or yard, whatever you're using, range is your wind that you're going to hold off to account for that mile an hour. So at 200 you hold 0.2, at 300 you hold 0.3, at 400 you hold 0.4, at 500 you hold 0.5. And if you're shooting a 3 mile an hour gun, that accounts for a 3 mile an hour wind at that distance. So I can hold the yard line in
Okay, so
tenths
let's
of a
say
mil.
it's that, but it's 20 miles an hour wind.
Then, so wind's linear. So a 10 mile an hour wind blows a bullet twice as far as a 5 mile an hour wind.
Mm-hmm.
So just for easy math, right? We're going to say our gun is a 5 mile an hour gun. So, and we're going to shoot 500 yards, right? So I'm going to hold 0.5 mils for a 5 mile an hour drift, and that's going to put me center. If I've got to hold a 20 mile an hour wind, that's 4 5 mile an hour increments. So I'm going to hold 0.5 4 times, which is 2 mils. So I'm going to hold left 2 mils, and that's going to drop me in center at 500 based off that math. And I know it's like super in the weeds and super nerd stuff, but it's true.
And you're running that in your head?
Yep. You want the super nerd thing that I can do in my head?
Yeah.
Give me a target size in inches, like somewhere between 10 and 30.
20.
20. All right. And then give me a mil anywhere between 1 mil and 3 mils.
2.5.
2.5. So that'd be 8, 10. That's easy. What was the size of the target?
20.
So it's 200 meters away.
You should have made it like 16.2.
So you do your target size in inches divided by your mil times 4 gives you your range in meters. So, yeah.
So
you
that's
really want to get nerdy? I can get nerdy.
So that's how you're milling targets. Like when we were talking, we were talking the other day about pre-rangefinders, right? And like trying to determine how far away a target is right before we all could just laze it. Yeah. We've seen guys come in from the AMU without rangefinders and run NRL hunter matches as a team and only mill targets the whole match.
Because they know the dip. See, you ever hear of a old? He passed away. Duncan Gilchrist.
I don't think I know.
He probably not. I mean, he was a very accomplished hunter, and a guide, and he used to write. He wrote these really great books, like great books. He wrote a book called All About Bears. He wrote a book called Hunt High. Now people think that was totally different.
Laws have changed.
All the time, man. Hunt High. A bunch of books. Anyways, he would explain this method. He would always shoot like a straight 4 scope or whatever the hell it was. And I even used this method where he'd say, take your scope and crank it up to 9. Every scope back then, you'd have a straight 4, you have a 3 to 9, right? Mm-hmm. Crank your scope up to 9. Have your buddy go out 100 yards with a tape measure. And we did this. Buddy go out 100 yards with a tape measure, turn your scope to 9 and measure how many inches fit between when your reticle goes from fat to skinny. Measure how many inches fit there between those points and measure how many inches fit between the post where it goes thin and the horizontal crosshair. Then he'd be like, most antelope are 18 inches high or 16, whatever the hell it was. He's like, most mule deer bucks. And he'd be like, I've measured 120 mule deer bucks. They're 24 inches high. Back to brisket. Okay, so you now know that like at 100 yards, a mule deer is 24 inches high. At 100 yards, a mule deer fits between what and what on your scope. So if you're looking and all of a sudden you'd be like, oh no, he's only half as tall as he's supposed to be. He must be, right? He's only a quarter as tall as he should be in there. So he must be blank. And that was.
So that's it. That's
how that was like how he suggested. And I tried to use it with limited success.
And it would work. It's just like the hardest way to do it. So it's exactly what a sniper's doing. It's just sniper has mil dots in there that gives him the precise measurements instead of.
But you got to know, then he must know what a normal person's shoulder width is.
Right.
What do you learn on a person?
20 inches.
Is what?
Shoulder to shoulder. 12 inches from the break in the shoulder to the top of the head.
That's just a normal guy.
That's what they say. 40 inches from the break of the crotch to the top of the head. They got to come up with something. It's got to be a standard.
So it's 40 inches from the crotch to the head.
Yep.
20 inches shoulder tip to shoulder tip.
12 inches from the break in the shoulder to the top of the head. That one doesn't work very well, but yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. They come up with a standard, and it's like, man. I look out there and it's like, okay, I know he's 40 inches tall and I mill him at 2 mils, he's 500 meters away. So doing exactly the same thing you're doing with the antelope, right? But it varies because if you're wearing baggy clothing or like that, it's a big antelope or a small antelope, right? If you change your dimension by 10%, your range is off by 10%. And that's if you milled it perfectly.
What did you think about that Ukrainian dude that supposedly got the new world record?
I didn't see that. Did he get really?
They're talking
There's gonna be
about
some
it.
Canadians that are upset.
Yep. A Ukrainian dude. What's that gun the Ukrainians are making? It's called the Lord of the Skies or something like that.
Yep. Yeah.
You didn't hear about this?
I did not. How far? It had to have been what,
it's
2.5 miles?
insane.
Something crazy.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Type
Yeah.
that up. Type
I remember
Ukrainian.
that. I remember that,
Ukrainian.
Longest sniper
Yeah.
shot.
Longest
So are
shot.
you still teaching how to mill just in case a rangefinder goes down?
It's like a legacy thing. It's I mean, nowadays guys they've got the rangefinder on their gun. Their buddy's got a rangefinder on their gun. They've got better ways to come up with that based off GPS. There's ways to come up with it. I mean, everybody's going to carry a handheld laser rangefinder. So like there's so many redundancies because you cannot shoot accurately without range. Like you must have range. You can kind of fudge the rest of it, but you must have range. And milling works great inside of 600 meters on big stuff, but it doesn't work on small. That's why I said when I asked for your example, it had to be greater than a mil, because if you start rounding anything under a mil, you're off by more than 10%, and you're going to be like, you can kind of fudge it. You're like, okay, well, I know I fudged it fat, so I know it's going to be closer, or I know I fudged it skinny, so I know it's going to be further, and you kind of guess.
That's like me taking measurements on when I'm cutting something with a skill saw.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Like heavy 3/4.
heavy 3/4. Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah,
Because we'll do anything not
it's
to
like
use
a
the metric
light,
system.
a light 3/4.
That's my pet peeve. Sockets and standard. Like, what's the next size up?
Sure.
Yep.
I got your Ukraine news. He was a 58-year-old ex-businessman turned expert sniper. 2.4 mile
Good Lord.
shot.
Hundreds of yards of wind drift.
And the name of the it is like the Lord of something rifle.
Mm-hmm.
How many does it say? How many yards of wind drift? Hundreds of yards.
Horizons Lord.
Of wind drift. Yeah, Horizons Lord.
No, it doesn't say. The barrel
Think
length
about
looks
that.
as
Just
as
seeing
tall as me.
2.5 miles. That's a long way.
I wonder how many shots he took.
Yeah. You have to
There's,
spot with a
there's
drone.
video of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, there is. You can
Yeah,
see
there's
it.
video of it.
Did he have like a video on his scope, or was it
I can't
something
remember
like
if
an
someone
external?
shot the video.
Here, the wind was projected to alter the trajectory of the bullet by about 200 feet.
Good.
Well, what would
200
even?
feet, sorry.
I mean, people
that-
love to
that's a
talk
lot.
about
Still.
spin drift, but spin at that range, like, what is that?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Not that. Change it over here. Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be
By
like.
the time of
Well, they
flight,
were
15
they were
seconds.
interviewing some people about it, and there was some people saying that at a point, it's just you also got pretty lucky.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like,
There's
how many
there's
shots
an
did he
element
take?
of luck. Well, no, it didn't. I don't think they did.
Well, I'm saying like over the course of him being out there, though,
Oh,
like
I
how
got
many
you.
times are you shooting? And then
Oh.
The
Not
story
taking
went,
anything
as
away
I
from
remember it, some guys were doing some chore type activities, and a guy came out and started pointing around like do that, or seemed to be instructing some people in something, and they identified him as an officer, and this guy, pop, and then I don't know, like minutes later, whatever the hell
Bullet finally fell
he
out
falls
of the sky.
over. Falls over. I don't know.
wow.
Yeah, you think 1 minute at that far is 44 inches. So if your gun were to hold a minute at that distance, it's still shooting a 44-inch group. Which it's not. There's no way.
No,
But
no.
if it did.
Yeah. There's the element of luck. Hey, Patrick, tell me a story about when you were going to get in trouble because you made a bolt gun at Sig. Because they just didn't do that.
Yeah, it was when I got here, I came from another hunting company, and the CEO knew when he hired me that I was a bolt gun guy, and so basically I had a little bit of excitement in me to do that when I got here, and the first thing he said to me was like, "No bolt guns." And anybody who knows our CEO, he's a big reason why I like working there. Like, he's a pretty dynamic dude. Like, he's very clear when he tells you you're not doing something and you're not doing something. But he's also very, like, he's more of a product guy than anybody in the company. Like, he wants to see new, cool, he loves seeing new products. That's like his favorite thing to do on a Friday is go to engineering and just poke around and check stuff out. So we, a couple of years went by and I worked on what I was working on there, did a lot of stuff on the rifle line. And I got some data on, at the time it was the Ruger RPR, and Ruger had been doing really well with that gun, like very, very well. And my kind of conversation with him the first time was like, just because everybody for years had said to him we should do a bolt rifle, a hunting gun. And I think what he saw from it was like, it wasn't genuine to Sig. It wasn't going to look like a something that Sig did well, and that was going to be perceived hard from the market. Other companies have tried it. Like it's no different than a hunting rifle company trying to make a pistol. It doesn't look authentic. So you're working twice as hard to gain people's like buy-in to it. So, my kind of pitch to him was like, it doesn't need to be a traditional gun. Like, we can do something that kind of meets the criteria of what our customer would be looking for. And I pitched really, really hard that, coming from where I came from, I told him, I was like, with working with these guys for 2 years, I had the best resource for a bolt gun out of any company in the industry, I would argue. Because I had these military guys that were former snipers. I have pro shooters. I have guys that are hunters. I have guys I had a whole mixed bag. And what I ended up doing was, when we started this, I had 25 guys in a room, and like, picture politics at Thanksgiving. That's what this sounded like every time we would do this, because everybody had an opinion and everybody else's opinion was wrong. But it was probably the coolest launch I've ever done because of that, because you got so much feedback from people that would be like, they carried it in the Army, and they're like, no, you never want to do that with a bolt gun. Like the mag release was it was full war.
Yeah.
Like, nobody could agree on a mag release. So like, a lot of PRS guys,
because you had the guys that wanted to drop it fast, and you guys that wanted to leave it all laying out in the woods because it fell off when you were walking.
Well, that was the funny part. It was actually the guys that were more military that were like, don't ever put a paddle on the outside of that trigger guard, because you're going to get out there and you're going to find your magazine's gone. So we went back and forth with that.
You got to not one of your magazines. We found a mag. No, what magazine did we find?
No, wasn't that a pistol mag on my goat hunt?
It was.
Yeah, it might have been a Sig mag. It was out of a.
It was funny. There's a tree down over the trail.
Yeah.
So you tell people we're getting all squirrely.
Yeah.
Probably with horses or whatever, trying to get around, and you can see somewhere left one laying there.
It was. I tried to put it in my Sig, and it wouldn't fit my Sig P320. Yeah.
But and you got to like go into like who some of those people were. Like, like the guy that hired me into the AMU, like my good friend Robbie. He's vice president of product management. Yeah. And then the guy, so he was in 3rd Ranger Battalion Sniper Platoon when it became like the sniper platoon for the entire battalion. And then the guy that actually stood up the platoon as a platoon sergeant was his boss, and he's at SIG also. And so him and me and Robbie, and then there's probably 4 other snipers that are in there. And then you've got the hunters, and it was like, it was serious business. Like, there was some feelings.
But I think that's what
the snipers and the hunters not see eye to eye on it?
Well, it's just different opinions on how things are. But I think that was actually one of the best things, because I think, like I had said earlier, like, as hunters, that was my thing, is like, we get lost in tradition. We get lost in the sense of like, we don't do it in our bows. Like, you look at bows, and every year they're like, 5 feet per second faster, and people go buy a new $1,000 bow. But when it comes to rifles, it's like, I've had this for 32 years and it does the trick. Yeah. But it's not about, in this day and age, accuracy is becoming an expected thing out of a lot of rifles. Like, companies are getting really good at making rifle barrels. So features are becoming a big thing. Like, you got to figure out how to do things better and make it more appealing to people outside of just how the rifle shoots. You got to have other features like folding stocks and things like that you can come up with that make it different. And that gun, one of the big things that those guys gave to us, meaning the military guys, was the receiver idea. Instead of like, we get that thing referred to a lot as a chassis gun. That's what that category is called. But a true chassis gun, you're putting a receiver into an action that has action screws. Action screws are a point of failure for a lot of guns. And so having a monolithic receiver with just that barrel nut on there, like, basically, if your barrel shoots good, your gun shoots good. There's no other variables. So that's what's so unique about that design that uses kind of a barrel extension instead of having a full receiver. The receiver is just there to run the bolt and to squeeze the trigger. There's no pressure, no operation happening.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, so it first of all, it made the gun interchangeable easily, but the other big part of it was like, you just make a good barrel and you have a good shooting gun. All the other variables are out of it, which was one of the like super interesting things that I learned while I was talking to them, because it's like, you're always like 700 action versus this action or that action, and when it gets down to it, like, you take all that out of the mix and you just need to make a good barrel. And that's what most companies, like I said, most companies nowadays are making better barrels than ever because of machinery. Like, you can see 300 guns out there, $300 guns that shoot 1 MOA. I mean, they advertise it. It's becoming a common thing. Now, getting consistency of accuracy and making, like, barrel after barrel, in other words, shoot that same quality is hard, but it's changed a lot. But we found with these guns just out of the gate, being new to making bolt guns, we were making accurate bolt guns like immediately. And it was because of the fact that design made it much more simplistic, and it kind of caught on pretty quick. And as far as like,
and it's underappreciated how big a deal that is. You know, like me and Robbie have sat out on the range torquing action screws, and you would have guns that would shoot good at 65 inch-pounds on action screws, or not, and then you loosen them down to 55 inch-pounds on the action screws, and all of a sudden they start shooting well. And it's like that's very difficult to ensure is correct when you're actually using the thing, and you're not in a competitive environment where you can check that all the time. So we eliminate a huge point of potential failure by just getting rid of it. Like it's not something you can mess up anymore. And there's a bunch of stuff like that.
But so we got that group together. We had our secret meetings, and I had an engineer that was a PRS guy that loved this project, and the key was making one. Because I knew if I could make one, it would get his interest, and the firing conversation of me leaving the company would go way down. Like I just had to let him see like what it would be like. And we made up one gun, and I put it in front of him, and it sounded like it was going to go salty at first, but then he was like, "This is interesting. Like I've never seen a bolt gun like this," and he started playing around with it. And the points I made that I think were important is, I watched that industry for so long. I was part of it, and everybody would, outside of just traditional guns, everybody would kind of piece together guns. So they'd be like, it has a 700 trigger, it has, this and this.
Oh, yeah.
And there was no new people coming into that category that were like, we're making a new gun. And this gun had 128 new parts to it. Like, every part on that gun was new. The only thing that was not made by Sig was the magazine for Magpul, which was an AI mag. Other than that, every other part we made in-house. So now you're truly making your own gun. You're controlling the manufacturing. You're controlling, things, not saying like, oh, we're just bound to whatever the last guy did by making the design work with his trigger. Everything was like that. And the guy who made that trigger, he is like our NASA engineer. Like, you go to this place, it's crazy. Like, the walls crawl with engineers in this company. Like, I never saw anything like it coming from where I came from. We had like 10 or 12. I came here, and we're at like, I think we're over 300 now.
Yeah.
And like, that's the CEO's thing. Like, he loves innovation. So like, an engineer walks down the road and it's like, you get in here. So we got guys in Oregon at our optics facility. We got guys down south at our ammo facility. And then we got a bunch up in New England. And those guys are all like top notch, pulled out of other areas. And the thing is, like, you would think you'd need like that. The world of like true gun makers was such a big thing for a while. The shop I worked at before, we had this place called the Chapel, which was like where everything was done on a Bridgeport and like guns were designed in there. Now you have these guys with like, as our buddy calls them, the cartoon drawings, the 3D, and like what these guys are capable of doing. And it's gotten so unbelievable that you can take a guy out of college, and some of the stuff these guys come up with, you're like, I never would have thought of that.
That's what drew me to Sig when I was leaving the Army was, I got a chance to meet our CEO, Ron Cohen, and ask him how he built such a business. And he said he hires the best people in the world, he pays them what they're worth, and he lets them do their job. And I'm like, man, like, what else here's all the rope. Like,
Yeah, Phil, the engineer, is listening in on this right now.
I don't think he is. He perked up when he said his name.
It is a very unique environment there. Like, I when I came here, I saw like, it's weird for all of us because being inside the walls and being there, I've been there now for 7 years. And when I first got here, like, we just won the M17, so the Army's handgun pistol contract. And so that was a really big deal for the company. And then go back a few years and we won the belt fed contract. We won the Tango 6T optic for the SDMR rifles. We won the sniper ammunition for the 300 Win Mag. So we were just winning all these contracts. And, it's like a lot of things. Like, you look at the guy, Robbie, he was referencing, used to make that comment, it's windy at the top. Like, we went from the underdogs that everybody was pulling for, and now we're like on that full force, like running away with it. And it's very interesting to see like how that demeanor has changed, how people are like, you're not the underdog anymore. You're like, you're standing on the top of the mountain and everybody's aiming up at you. It's pretty crazy, but it's a cool, what people don't see and what is like the coolest part about Sig to me is it's literally what he said, it's work ethic. Like you walk in this place, we'll get a contract and where, a lot of companies will submit what they have. These guys, these engineers, like these dudes sleep under tables and just stay there. And it's like this hoorah mentality. We're going to get this done. We're going to give them what they want and we're going to win it. And I've never seen a place with so many crazy people that like, if somebody if they ask us to make a gun that shot the moon down, they'd be like, we can figure this out.
How big a moon you got?
Yeah. Exactly.
but it to me, it makes a lot more sense if you look at it, not as a company, but as like a sports team. Like if you look at the sports teams, if you've got a team that's dominant and winning, who do you want to go play for? Right? You want to play for the winning team, right? So now not only is Sig winning, but now Sig has the pick of the litter. So it just snowballs.
Yeah.
That image stabilizing you've seen on the binoculars, that had military relevance. That was Daniel saying like we've used these things for years. Why don't people use these when they hunt?
Years ago we wanted to get our neighbor in Alaska a present. We bought him some, remember those old like I guess it's roof prism. Image stabilizing binoculars. Which was like
size
the
of a
only
briefcase.
the only people that use them, he's used them out of boats. But then he thought they were too nice to keep in his boat. So he just left them
bird watching.
He left them on his counter. But that was the only pair of image stabilizing binoculars I'd ever touched. And I just thought of them as like ship captains.
Yeah, and I think the idea behind it, like I said, Daniel was one of the ones when we were out, we were in Alaska, and he had said to me, he's like, why don't people use image stabilizing for this stuff? Because we were watching the guide at the time, like every 5 minutes, stop, take off his pack, put down his tripod, glass a hillside. And we took the first couple sets up on the next trip to Alaska. And Daniel had like the prototype pair, and the guy's taking his tripod out, and Daniel's like, oh, there's a couple U's on that hillside. And he's reading out to the guy, and the guy's like, can I check this out for a minute? And I realized after that, when we got back, we were all like, hey, I think we got a tiger by the tail here. Like, it was pretty crazy to see how quickly it took off. But it's just, that's why I said, like, one of the advantages we have is we have multiple areas of people with experience that you can get technology from other categories that, as hunting companies, a lot of the time it's like, this is what we always do. And to have people that are like, how come you guys don't do it like this? It's kind of cool to be like being on the other side, like not being a hunting company trying to figure something out, but instead working with people from the military that are like, why don't hunters do this? And you're like, and then you put it in your own sense. Like I think about all that stuff as these guys say it to me, like he's telling me about image stabilization. I'm like, yeah, I don't know why. I don't have an explanation why we wouldn't use that on everything. Like,
no, it's cool, man.
And we got it on rangefinders now.
To hunt with, like using it for hunting turkeys and stuff. It's cool. Because there's no way I'm gonna set up a tripod hunting turkeys.
Yeah, I carry my 10X as turkey hunting in my just in my little chest rig or in my pocket. Like I can put those things in my pocket when I deer hunt.
You're just looking for like a head. You know?
Yeah. You were just turkey hunting with them recently. Yeah.
No, I liked it, man.
And
because like I said, I'm not gonna set it on a tripod.
Yeah.
All the
walking up on whatever openings and clearings, whatever, just to give a quick little scan in there. Oh yeah, way different.
Yep.
And all the Western
then I wound up
hunters,
sitting there like looking at. I was trying to figure out. So I wound up sitting there. I turned them off and on.
Yep.
And I remember looking at a light switch.
Yep.
And looking across the room at a light switch and focusing on the screw.
Yep.
The screws that hold a switch cover.
Yeah.
Like that level. I'm like, damn, man.
Yeah, there's
you know what I mean? You can get where you can see like the details of a light screw looking across the room, free-handing it, and then I just wanted to see like up close to get a sense of how it worked. But man,
we added that.
Slick.
There's a target mode in those now. So the original ones were just image stabilization, so they were made to scan, and then we added that target mode, which adds 40% of stabilization. So if you're like looking at a buck and you're trying to identify if it's something you want to go after, you lock that thing back and push it forward and that light turns orange, it increases that. So if you try to start scanning, it's going to skip. Yep. And that's because it's trying to lock on what you're looking on. So you're getting like that extra, like it's literally like being on a tripod at that point.
Yeah. Hey, you know what I want to ask you about? Oh, what's up? Oh, we're out of time.
Yeah, I guess. I mean,
you don't say.
Yeah, go figure. We're going.
You got to work
here.
on this thing, Steve, where people are trying to give you silent messages, and then you call attention to it.
I feel like you know, we were talking about the image stabilizing and stuff like that. And, you know, what folks are going to learn pretty soon is that we're going to be working pretty closely together across optics and guns and ammo. We have like a lot of those same questions. Like we go out in the field and we're like, why can't you just build Swaro glass, night force durability with a Sig laser? And, you know, it's obviously got to be hard, right? But like when we work with internal brands, we work with like First Light, we get to help build pants, right? And we're like, all right, now we have a cool pant that we get to bring to the audience. I'm excited to go down that same rabbit hole with optics, ammo, and the Cross, right? Like there's things we sat and looked at targets all morning, right? To look at group sizes. There's still improvements to be made, but now we get to just like be kind of a part of that process.
Yeah, like can it be left-handed?
Yeah. Let's not get crazy, Steve.
Oh, let me ask one. I want to ask one last question. Did you say to me one time, I feel like you said to me one time, you couldn't win a tournament with a monolithic bullet? Did you tell me that?
I feel like I've pointed to their accuracy before. Like I think bonded. I think you could like with you take like a Barnes or something like that. I think in the past bonded hasn't always been built for accuracy. Right. I would argue like the winner is AccuBonds, right? Like they've been doing it for a long time. So we've been having that conversation. But like when we did that copper versus lead video, the bonded I was using at that time was by far the hardest to get in the gel at 500 yards, right? Like my spread was just, it's just like relative to cup and core match ammo and then like some of the good Barnes stuff that's out there, it just hasn't been the focus of the bullet design.
When you're shooting in tournaments, do you shoot all your bullets you shoot in tournaments have a lead component?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, and one thing, like there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is that lead's so much more dense. You get a higher BC because that copper's lighter in density, so it's always going to have more drift. The same exact bullet design externally with a lead core will weigh more than the exact same bullet made out of copper.
I see.
Yeah. And so.
Yeah, so like a lot of times, like you'll even see with your hunting ammo, like a copper bullet that's lighter will be going slower, right, than a heavier lead bullet because they can't get like that sectional density. You can't put the spin on it, right, to stabilize like you can a lead bullet.
Why aren't people putting tungsten in bullets?
They have. They're very expensive, but they're extraordinarily effective.
Do they mushroom?
Depending on what you design them to do, they'll do about whatever you want them to do. And I mean, there's some guys that you can punch through just about anything you want to with those things. As far as armor penetration, the other thing is they'll put dust in there, so it'll have almost no over penetration, but it'll have massive foot-pounds of energy.
But they're expensive.
Super expensive.
Like a bismuth.
Way more. Well, I don't know. More than that, from my understanding. Yeah.
Yeah, you're stepping up another notch just because of manufacturing.
And cost.
Yeah.
But insane performance. But if you want to spend $14 a bullet,
it's bad.
It's not a small step up.
That's worse than a turkey load.
I know. Yeah, you got to want a turkey bad, which I do. Shooting that stuff.
Can we talk about the new high test ammo?
Sounds like we got to get off.
Is that too early?
The hybrid?
Yeah.
We
can't talk about it, Corinne says.
All right, man. You guys got to
It's really cool. I'll tell you that.
Is it?
It's super cool. Yeah. It's the next step.
I tell everybody Daniel's line, which is it's like going from black powder to smokeless powder.
Yeah.
Like it's that big of a deal.
Yeah. It's turning your 308 into a 300 Win Mag. Yeah.
When are we going to get to shoot that?
Very soon.
Oh, really? It's not just military stuff?
Oh, no. We're making it. We're producing it already in the 277 for commercial, and we're making a Cross in it. We're making the Spear, which is the Army's rifle in it. So, yeah, we're making it commercially. It's SAMI approved. It's like a real deal now, and it's a 308 base case that we're doing. So, 277 obviously being the first one, but we have the world is our oyster with that technology now. We can do whatever we want.
Imagine scaling it down and having a 300 blackout with 308 ballistics.
Got it.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
All right, Yanni. When are you doing your shooting training?
Next week.
Good luck, buddy.
Thanks.
You guys got to come back soon.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
can talk about more gun stuff. I might make me a big old list of gun questions.
Let's do it.
Perfect.
Shooting questions.
Yeah.
Like, why am I so good?
The looks help.
Even as a lefty, still so good.
No, it's frustrating. Shooting guns. I mean, I love it, but man, it's hard. It's like you just got to practice, which we just did not do.
People do it with
There with
bows.
Garrett.
People do it with bows.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
with rifles.
People don't
it's
think
like,
twice about shooting their
Yeah.
bow all the time. People don't. I always joke, like, this is the last thing I'm going to say, Corinne. When I was a little kid, when it was time to deer hunt, you turn deer hunting age, you take a milk jug, a gallon milk jug, fill it full of water, set it on a fence post. You get about 75 yards away, hit the jug. All right.
we were
You were done shooting.
we were the paper plate. You hang the paper plate on the tree, and if you hit 2 out of whatever you were shooting out of it, you were good to go.
Yeah, I was like, congratulations.
Yeah,
you're an
good to go.
American deer hunter.
Yep.
All right, man. We'll talk to you guys soon. I'm going to work up my list of questions. You guys come back on.
Let's do it.
All right, thanks.